You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. The Iron Lady sings and that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. We certainly appreciate you guys. As always, the Chris Voss Show is the family that loves you but doesn't judge you. At least not as harshly as your mother-in-law. But if you refer her to the show, maybe she'll appreciate you more. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss, one of the TikTok, and all those crazy places on the internet. Today we have returning guest Robert Feldman joins us on the show. I was really interested to hear his perspective on this. He's been on the show a couple times before with Wow's Insurance.com. He is an insurance professional with nearly 25 years of experience. We're going to be talking today about California, the housing insurance crisis, pretty much nationwide, and how he's been working to resolve it. And I was really interested, after having him twice on the show, what his insights were into the tragedy happening in California, the huge fires, the huge losses in tens of thousands of homes, I think it is at this point. His specialty is insurance in the fire zones and hard-to-place risks. He's an industry professional who served as a speaker at the California Association of Realtors. He travels the state educating realtors about how to secure insurance for homes that are deemed uninsurable. My brain's deemed uninsurable. Anyway, just joke there. Robert, it's Friday, people. Robert serves on many task forces and insurance panels, working directly with senior leadership of many insurance carriers to solve the California's state insurance crisis. To that end, he's the founder of Wow's Insurance Services, designed to deliver insurance solutions to large homes that struggle to secure insurance in California. Welcome to the show, Robert. How are you?
Thank you. I'm holding up, man. It's been a wild and crazy ride, Chris.
Definitely. The history, we've had you on the show twice before, this crisis tragedy, this horrific event of the wildfires in the Pacific Palisades, and of course all over California, Southern California and LA, even in North Hollywood. I mean, it was crazy. So give us your .coms and tell us what your thoughts are these days with what's been going on.
Again, as you mentioned, my name is Robert Feldman, CEO and co-founder of Wow's Insurance. We are a wholesaler that brings insurance carriers into California. Brokers, over 3,000 brokers appointed throughout the state, working on the Western United States at this point. But obviously, our website is Wow's, WOWS insurance.com. And my email is Robert@Wow's Insurance. Really, right now, we were on the show, and Chris, we talked about it. And over the last couple of years, I felt like almost like the boy that's been crying wolf, warning some really scary things. And obviously, this is a lot worse than we ever possibly could imagine. This is for everyone out there listening. This is, basically where I live. This is ground zero. So it's not, I live in Southern California. One of the fires actually was blowing towards my house. I was originally one of the ones that survived the Woolsey fire, which is the big Malibu fire years ago. Mm-hmm. As bad as that fire was, this is I call a 10X fire. So Woolsey was supposed to be one of the worst fires in California or state history. And this one will be at least 10 times worse.
Wow.
At least 10 times worse.
Yeah. 10 times worse. Yes. It's what is the scale of it right now? People might be listening this years from now on YouTube and our channels. Of course, we keep all of our stuff up. But tell us what the scale is right now, as you understand it, if you have some numbers.
Yeah, the numbers are pretty staggering. There's estimation and what's really scary, Chris, is that there's a fire towards Pasadena called the Eaton fire, EATON fire. Mm-hmm. That one on its own would have been a massive story, top event. The scary part of this is that was a separate fire, separate event going on at the exact same time, and it is almost dwarfed, because the Palisades fire is exponentially bigger. It's actually more loss. So what's scary is we had multiple events happening, fire events happening separate. They're multiple and happening all at the same time. So it's obviously stretched resources and did a lot of really rough, terrible things. While that was happening, or before it was happening, I was really concerned. I was talking about the fact that the winds, we had gale winds that were pushing 70, 80 miles an hour. And when that happens, Chris, I'm sorry, a fire catches, it can throw ambers 2 to 3 miles.
Yeah.
And so it was just, areas that burned in the Pacific Palisades were, by many accounts, not areas that could burn. And the reason why I say that is, even though they were in quote unquote fire zones, these were full communities. A lot of you have seen this on the news. These are full community areas that were not really, they were in a fire zone, but not deemed a fire zone, is what I would say.
Really?
Because a lot of the homes that burned were not, like, a lot of times in the news, they show homes that are on edges of hillside, all these places. I got privy to see this was like, I've never experienced a war zone in my life. And I hope I never do. This is what I would imagine a war zone looked like. Everything is gone. Not just, this is the really crazy thing, when I got privy to see, there's a section of the Palisades where not just the cell phone towers are gone, but the fire hydrants are gone.
They're just melted.
It melted.
Wow.
Cars are melted to the ground.
Yeah, I've been seeing
cars
that.
Cars are melted. The rims of the cars melt into the ground.
Wow. Yeah, I saw a porta potty where just what had come out of the porta potty was left, and the porta potty had completely melted. There was not even a sign of the porta potty. And the guy was showing, he's like, there was a porta potty there, and it's just vaporized, basically.
It vaporized in a whole area.
Yeah.
I, again, like I say, I hope I never end up in a war situation or being see. This is what I would analogize what it looked like. And I'm sorry to say there are lots of lives that are lost. They're still counting. The problem with an area this massive, usually in most fires, you'll see like an area where maybe a street gets 4 or 5 homes, or maybe 7 or 8 homes in a street. This is 400,000 or 500,000 homes in one area gone.
Yeah, just wiped off the planet. And
it's scary.
The precursor to this, let's talk a little bit about that, because we've had you on the show before. You've been trying to resolve the issue that a lot of these homeowners, unfortunately, will face now, where they were getting canceled. I believe State Farm was one of the big insurance carriers in California. State Farm isn't there. Gonna get a C&D over that one. I keep calling my State Farm agent. He never appears. Isn't that the correct? He's like, I get a busy signal. But a lot of insurance carriers, this has been happening, I believe, in Florida and Texas as well, started pulling out of the state over the last 2 or 3 years. Give us an update on how that works, or precursor, so we understand.
Well, what has happened, obviously the risks are, and this is a thing that insurance companies are businesses, Chris. They are a for-profit business, regulated but for profit. And so when a business starts to lose money or loses money, they will close things up or stop doing the business that's making them lose money. So insurance carriers were in California prior to this event, where over the last couple of years, really pulling back, in essence, canceling policies. With that said, as a wholesaler, we've been very successful in bringing carriers back in. One of the questions I get a lot now, Chris, is what's going to happen now after the fires? And so we have multiple carriers. As crazy as it sounds, we have brokers that have sent things to us to get, for quotes through our carriers that we wholesale through. And we're actually in the process of binding policies already at this point. Not exactly on the site, but at least it's not a complete Southern California shutdown, is which it was at the fire.
Yeah. It's and so now many of these poor people that I heard one story of a couple that was in their 90s, they're old senior citizen folks, like just 6 months ago or something, or 3 months ago, they had their fire insurance canceled, and so they probably just wiped their whole life savings.
Well, and that's the terrible thing. That's the terrible thing about it. What I would say, though, the one thing I will say about the homes in the Pacific Palisades, along with the Eaton fire in Pasadena, is prior to the loss, prior to the event occurring, there were insurance carriers writing. There was no part of the Palisades that was uninsurable, is what I would say.
Wow.
There was carriers willing to write it. The big problem, and I would say this is that a lot of seniors, to your point, they were with a company and they were paying X, and now maybe the insurance is 2 or 3X, meaning 2 or 3 times more. And some consumers, I'm sorry to say, made the decision because they own their house not to insure it.
Damn.
And so when you make that decision, this is the terrible outcome. And the opposite way, my heart goes out to everybody out there. I gave my email out earlier for your listeners, anyone that's directly connected to. We're helping people just in general. I've had back-to-back meetings the last 3-4 days with every major realtor chain in California, giving them updates, because that's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about the 5 steps of how to recover from this and what to do. And and we're just getting the word out, and I'm fielding, God, well over 100 calls a day for people that aren't even consumer or clients. I call them consumers because they're not clients, that we're just trying to help people get to the right spots and unwind and get them in the process of getting going to recover.
Wow. It's crazy to think about. I mean, I don't know. I suppose the attorneys maybe might have something to do with some of this, but I don't know. I don't know how the whole thing. I mean, maybe the federal government bailing out people for stuff as well. I don't know if they'll get bailed out. It's kind of interesting how we'll bail out billionaires and billion-dollar companies, but the average Joe, gets thrown to the wolves.
And this is going to be an interesting one, because this is not the Palisades. The Eaton fire is very typical to a fire that has happened in California, which is devastating. The Palisades fire there's a whole section of the Pacific Palisades. Those that aren't familiar, there's a famous freeway called the 405 freeway. And there's a Santa Monica freeway. Most people have heard the Santa Monica freeway. So that's crossroads, or if I were giving you major landmarks. And where the fire started to really break out was near the Getty Museum.
Yeah.
So the Getty Museum is a landmark, if you're listening, that'll tell you, kind of where it is if you look at a map. It burned basically from the Getty Museum to the ocean.
Yeah. Jeez. That's
and
far.
everything in between.
Wow. It's a miracle
there's not a lot of things.
Getty Museum, but I guess they did a lot of updating.
They did a tremendous amount of fire hardening and were able to defend it.
Yeah. But geez, if that would have burned with all the artwork and stuff inside of it.
Oh my goodness.
But I mean, it doesn't minimize everyone else's loss. So I don't want to frame it that way. The way I put it. This seems to be. I think. We have these rising cases of climate change and the effect that it's having, and it's not fun. Anybody who's been seeing the weirdness go on, where definitely climate change and climate reaction and climate issues are ramping up. We recently had an author on the show, I think a year ago or a few months back, where he works for a national news channel, and they send him to the middle America for small to medium sized towns when they have catastrophes of climate change. And when these small towns, middle America, sometimes they're those old cities that got bypassed by the highway. They're on life support as it is because they're just small towns. But to have some of these climate events, it can put the whole town out of business and destroy the town. California may see an even bigger migration, but I think some insurance companies may be looking at this, and I think maybe nationwide insurance premiums might go up on homeowners insurance because
it's already on the rise, Chris.
Wow.
It's already on the rise.
Wow.
And so here's what's going to happen. And this is part of what we talked about last time, Chris. I use a saying, Einstein's theory of insanity. The industry and collectively doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And why I say that is, if anyone looks up we have our website, wowsinsurance.com. You can go on there and see what we're proposing to change and how insurance changes. with our programs. But at the same time, this is going to be a situation where we're going to have to aggressively change what we're doing. There's been a lot of pushback. A lot of the sections that caused this inferno and fire, first of all, you're never going to stop the wind.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say, there was gust winds as high as 80, 90 miles an hour. They were talking about almost hurricane winds.
Oh yeah, the Santa Ana winds are crazy.
So the only thing we're going to be able to do as a California, or really the Western United States, is we're going to have to get 100 times better about things like the in essence, areas that have uncontrolled burns are really coming off of areas that have not been maintained. A lot of the areas outside of the Pacific Palisades haven't been maintained in 30 years. So they had brush undergrowth that caught fire, and through this thing with the wind, we're going to collectively as a state are going to have to look at this and make these changes to make our environment safer for people to live. I mean, I understand there are some concerns. There's some people that will be upset from that. There's a damage to the environment. And I could make an argument now that I could argue that this event was more damaging to the environment than the last 30 years of not doing the preparation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of concerns about animals. Well, guess what happened to all the animals that were in the path of this fire? Guess what doesn't happen to the animals that are under a controlled burn?
Yeah.
We're going to have to start doing changes, Chris. We're going to have to make changes, or what's going to happen is the insurance companies are not going to be able to afford this and be able to afford to be able to give insurance.
And ultimately consumers then too. Yeah.
Got it. It's there's a lot of, I said it earlier, a lot of people, insurance is a business. Obviously it's a business. So if it makes profit, it stays in business. If it loses money, it pulls out of a given area or type of insurance. So by doing mitigation, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in California, and not just California, but the Western United States. You're not going to control winds. You're not going to control a fire when there's wind.
Yeah. But
you can control the fuel to the fire so that it can't just create this inferno.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the one thing that will come out of this is hopefully they build better fire codes and different things, but it may make
that's part of it too. Houses being rebuilt will be built stronger, but again, I'm sorry to say, with the wind, if we do not take out the fuel lines, the fuel areas, and we don't maintain the fuel areas, I don't care how great, I don't care how perfect a house is built, it's going to burn. There was such a heat to this fire.
Yeah.
There was such a heat to this fire, it was melting cement.
So let's get into, now that we've talked about the problem, let's get into how WOW's Fire Insurance Services is working to resolve this. You work with brokers, you work with homeowners. Give us a rundown of what you guys are doing there.
Right now, it's not an insurance conversation for the fire affected areas. Well, I've been speaking on multiple, as I mentioned to you earlier, a lot of community events and starting to work on and work through. I've had 25 years experience of being in every major fire, Chris. I'm sorry to say, we built I have a 5-step process for recovery. We call it a 5-step process for recovery, and it's a chain process. It's not like 5 things to do. It's an order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, following each other. Okay. As crazy as it sounds, Chris, and I'm sorry to say this, as we're pushing towards a week removed from the fire where a lot of this happened, there are people that have lost their homes that still have, the first step is simply filing a claim.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people right now that have lost their homes and it's devastating. They've done the right thing. They've gotten away from the situation. They've got temporary housing, whether it's a hotel or staying with friends. And obviously this being such a devastating event, I talk about virtual hugs. I'm on helping people, giving everyone a virtual hug. And part of that hug, though, Chris, is kind of funny. It's a hug saying, I'm sorry, but it's also a hug to pick them up off the ground.
Wow.
And start talking about things they have to do. And with that situation, filing a claim, making sure you have a claim number, and making sure you have a claim adjuster it starts off as number one, you have to have done. Once that's completed, you can go to step 2. Step 2, as crazy as it sounds, is certifying the home as a total loss.
Okay.
Now, why it's important to certify a total loss is once you certify a home as a total loss, the insurance companies are required to give you percentages of both your additional living expenses and your contents coverage.
Wow.
And it allows you to sign long-term leases. We had one report of a friend of ours contact that people are contacting for rent in New Mexico.
Wow.
From this fire.
Wow.
Oregon, Washington, New Mexico. People are scattering. And that's a lot of it has to do with technology right now, Chris. I mean, like an example we talked about prior to the show.
Mm-hmm.
You could set up in a lot of places, people that are remote. I've recommended to seniors that, hey, you might not want to be in Los Angeles right now while they figure this all out.
Yeah.
Get yourself somewhere, Park City, Utah, Bend, Oregon, go to Las Vegas, go to Nevada, get yourself, because you can rent potentially if you can get away with it, whether you're a remote person or whether you are if you're retired, you might have that availability to get away from.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But number two, when you certify, allows you to get to number three. Number three is securing where you're going to live. Because once you have the claim secured and you have it certified as a total loss, it allows you to open up step three, which is long-term housing.
Mm-hmm.
This is not going to be done in 6 months. This is going to be years.
Yeah, it's going to be years. I mean,
so then in the fourth step, once we get that third one done, you'll laugh, Chris. The fourth step sounds very early, but it's very important to do in your claims process. It's to hire, in essence, work with and look to get a licensed architect to start to do your house, to build the plans for your house.
Wow.
Insurance companies, once you've certified a total loss and you have that claim number and claim adjuster, once you have the architect will put a bid together for you to redo the design plans for your house.
Mm-hmm.
The insurance company is going to pay that as part of your coverage, and that gets the ball started. Once they have the architectural plans, you can get to a builder, which is the last step. And people will go, Robert, it might be years before they can get to this properties because of how bad it is. You're right. But by having all 5 of these steps completed with a builder giving you a bid, it also allows the insurance company to pay you all your money that you're needing for the rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
So it's why these 5 steps are so very important, Chris.
There you go. It's going to be interesting too because it's going to drive up rents in other areas as these people get displaced, which we already have a housing crisis and crazy rents and crazy all that stuff. We already have a shortage of homes too, so there's not enough for everybody. So it's going to create a lot of pressures in other environments. My friends in Silicon Valley and San Francisco say a lot of people moved up there from Pacific Palisades. And, it's probably going to be displacement to the point that some people maybe not return.
I think that's going to happen a lot, Chris. I really honestly think it's going to be a really big thing. I think there's a certain segment now. It might be 5 or 10%. It could be 25%. We don't know. But I think this will be a good, sizable amount of people that will not return.
How does homeowners insurance work on the payout for something like this? Do you have to rebuild in the area, or will they pay you the full amount of your loss if you decide to relocate someplace and you're like, fucking, I'm never going back there?
Yeah. Okay. So really what I usually give as advice is you want to get through those 5 steps.
Okay.
At least we're to the builder. Because once you actually have your architectural plans and you have a builder that gives you a bid to rebuild your house, here's the bid to rebuild your house and here's the costs. Mm-hmm. That will get you the money that you would potentially, if you do not get to that point, you could be shrinking your total, or you're not going to be maximizing your potential coverages with your insurance company. So it's why you want to get to that 5th step, because you can then look to maximize.
Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. I mean, I don't know, man.
It's on the fly, Chris. This is not normal. This is not a normal fire. There's going to be rules that are going to be changing. I was on with a really big name you would know today, Realty Chain. And one of the questions, I had over 500 realtors on it. And what they were asking questions on is like, okay, well, how is this? And the answer is we're going to be 85% the same. 15% is going to change. And what the 15% is, I can't tell you. So we have to wait to see what happens.
Wow. I wonder if there's any chance one of the problems that, California has is it's known for just incredible amounts of permits and time it takes to build anything. Bill Maher was recently, for a couple of years has been going on about how I think it took 5 or 7 years for him just to be able to add solar panels to his back of his house
Yeah,
and
it's
get the
crazy.
coatings for it. And
That's got to
so,
change. That's got to
yeah,
change,
that's what I
Chris.
was going
It's
to
got to change.
say. It seems like that does need to change,
It has
especially
to.
at
If
least
it
for this
if it
event.
doesn't, well,
Yeah.
what's funny? They've already made announcements now that they're all of the different things that cause that they're relaxing all the rules.
Oh wow.
In essence, to do it. But they do that a lot of times in when fire or major catastrophes happen.
Oh, do they?
But the problem is again Einstein's theory of insanity, Chris.
Doing the same thing.
Are we going to go? We're doing the same over and over again,
Yeah.
and we're going back. I mean, we got to make changes.
Mm-hmm.
We got to make changes, man. If we don't, we're going to be in the same road over and
Yeah.
over and over again.
And it seems like I think we need to prepare. I don't think they think I'm calling out of school here, but it seems like what we need to do is also prepare that these are going to get worse over time.
Yes,
The
and
climate change disasters and everything else.
well, and that goes back to my earlier comment, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to get, I am a George Patton fan, the famous tank commander fan. I read his memoirs.
Mm-hmm.
Any battle can be won if it's properly planned for with proper resources.
You mean we have to plan?
There you go. So to your point, Chris, you're 100% right. These events continue to get worse if we don't mitigate, if we don't do things to make the changes. You're not properly planning for it. You're just going to end up losing the fight.
So, who are the prospective customers for you, or people that you want to work with out there that might be listening on the show?
Yep.
And why should they be reaching out to you so that you can help them with whatever they need?
Well, first and foremost, we are a wholesaler, so we bring insurance carriers into California and work with over 3,000 brokers.
Wow.
That's what we talked about prior to. At this moment, we're just helping everyone take a deep breath.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of bad information out there. I mentioned to you earlier, my email is robert@wows, WOWS, insurance.com. I'm answering 200 to 300 emails a day and taking probably over 100 calls.
Holy crap.
And so, and the reason why we're doing it is this is what I like to think is we're all hands on deck. Mm-hmm. This is not a moment where, I think a lot of times I could easily shy away and help clients only or help brokers that have clients.
Mm-hmm.
I answer phone. If someone needs help, I've said this on every major realtor chain that I've worked with, the team meetings or Zoom meetings. Mm-hmm. And I've been helping people. I was going till about 11:15 last night, and I got up this morning at the crack of dawn to go to the gym because I knew it was the 1 hour, Chris, I would get by myself. So other than that, it's going to be pretty wild all day.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate your support and helping people. I'm sure there's a lot of people. Yep. Maybe the people. Are you getting reach out from the people who, their home hasn't burned down? They're in some of the other areas, but
yep.
They're looking for insurance.
Yep, we do that too. I mean, we'll help with because we're helping people get out of the moratoriums mm-hmm. and helping get people to insurance carriers. The ones that haven't gotten damaged or peripheral areas that are being canceled for right now still, wow. We're still helping with. We have multiple programs and we get consumers to the right spots.
There you go. Well, it's great that you're doing that and stuff. Anything more we need to let people know about what they can do and how they can reach out to you, et cetera, et cetera?
Absolutely. First and foremost is the 5 steps are really so very important for anyone that's listening right now that would like those. Obviously, I've mentioned a couple times, if you don't want to keep getting the rewind, you can easily email me at robert@wows, WOWS insurance.com. You can see our website at wowsinsurance.com. We're just here to change not just California, but the Western United States. And we're the tip of the spear, as we say, to try to make that change.
There you go. Well, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Robert, as always. And
the honor's mine, Chris. The honor's mine.
I'd like to say we don't want to have you back anymore for any future fires, but they'll probably have to have you back for more education and future disasters.
I think the update would be great every so often, just for your clients that are listening right now. We've got to get back in and keep giving everybody updates.
Yeah, and Florida needs help too. I'm sure that Florida is.
It was so funny. I was asked by one of the major insurance because they like the concept of WOW so much. Mm-hmm. They asked if I want to be in Florida. I go, I got to help California and the Western United States first.
That's true. It's the biggest economy. It's the 5th biggest economy in the world, I think, still even bigger than Germany. We can't have LA go down. I think movies are still our number 1 export these days. So, you know, we can't have Hollywood get lost, I guess.
Yep.
Anyway, thank you very much, Robert, for coming on the show.
Thank
People
you.
will check out your thing, and our thoughts go out to everyone who
Awesome.
suffered through this event and hang in there. Seeing the people of LA get together, I saw a picture of what looked like a whole mob of people that had shovels and cleaning materials and stuff that were going out to help start cleaning up lots and things.
Yep.
Seeing the outpouring of human.
It's the greatest thing about us.
Yeah.
That's the greatest thing about us is when things are terrible, the good of humanity steps in
Mm-hmm.
and we rally.
There
And
you
that's
go.
what you're seeing right now. And that's the greatest thing.
If we can always remember to do that when times aren't in crisis, that we should band
Yeah.
together and help each other and lift each other. But thank you very much for coming on the show. Thanks, Arnis, for tuning
Thank
in.
you.
Go to goodreads.com/Chris Foss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Foss, Chris Foss one, Chris Foss. Chris Foss one at TikTok, I guess, unless they close it in 3 days. The Supreme Court just announced that they can shut it down. So we'll see what happens here. Or go to Goodreads or what is it? ChrisFossFacebook.com. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay
Thank
safe.
you.
We'll see you next time.